Welcome. I'm glad you're all here. I'm Mark Nelson. I am a candidate for the State House in District 93, which is 3 precincts in Bettendorf. Hi, Janet. How are you? And then the eastern half of Davenport, south of 53rd Street. This is nominally a campaign event. I would do this if I wasn't running. Tony's a good friend of mine, known him and his wife for over 10 years, served on some national committees. This is an issue Tony, after he, I think even before he was retired, was pretty passionate about. He was a lieutenant for the Denver Police Force, had a storied career with plenty of entertaining stories from policemen. But as he retired, he got involved with the League, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, and has been on the board of directors and the National Speakers Bureau for that. I want to be sure on one side here, there's one thing, none of us here tonight are going to say, I still don't think so, that doing drugs is good or right. You know, this is a public policy issue. Frankly, from my own side, I look at that and say doing drugs is stupid. I don't know necessarily whether we've been very successful at legislating against stupidity. It's a major public policy cost. I'm here as much to listen to Tony in order to help develop some thoughts as to how to approach this from a policy standpoint. But I'm going to let Tony get started. He's got about 45 minutes, is it?
Yeah, maybe less.
A little less than that, and then we'll do some questions. And I have some campaign information on the table there with Susan and Tom, if anybody are interested in it. So, Tony Ryan.
Thank you. Good evening. Oh, yes. Nice and strong. Okay. I think I can see that for the most part from here. Let me move up just a little bit. I was just updating my presentation, so I'm not totally sure we're all done. Believe it or not. So, okay. Anyway, Law's an organization. I'm on the board of directors, as a matter of fact, called LEAP, which stands for Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. Prohibition meaning that this is, in our minds, the second prohibition that this country was engaged in, the first one being alcohol, which did not go well and lasted 13 years. Took a constitutional amendment to enact, and the public rose up and said, enough of this stuff. Let's go back to letting people drink and deal with the outcome of that. I have to say right up front, 36 years experience in law enforcement, alcohol is what keeps police officers employed, not drugs. Okay, anything you can think of that involves any level of violence or stupidity is probably, for the most part, alcohol related. Whether it's domestic violence, or homicides, or neighborhood disputes, or rape, other forms of sexual assault, disturbances. Someone's been drinking. You know, there's particularly noticeable when the Broncos lost the game in the light, they were saying something like, "Oh, there's a bunch of donkeys anyway." You know, husband's been drinking beer all that time. And then the calls for service start coming out. So, you know, that kind of stuff, alcohol, not marijuana, not even all the other drugs. Also causes more death than all the other illegal drugs combined. Statistically fact. Anyway, if we go next, please start over. Start. So we talk about everyday, you've seen this, everyday drugs are in the news. Next, push the button again. More drugs are seized. More drugs. Money is seized by various agencies. New record busts attained. We've had this drug war for 41 years. And they say it's very successful. And I have to ask the question, if it's so successful, how come every year some of the country, especially down along the border with Mexico, we all of a sudden hear we made the biggest bust ever. In 41 years of the drug war, we're still making the biggest bust ever. And we just knocked some cartel right out, and the other cartels are saying, hey, thanks, we didn't have to kill them to get them out of the way. You just arrested them and took all their stuff. And 20 minutes later, stuff's still being sold in the same place. One more drug smuggling operations, quote, destroyed, crippled, ended. I just covered that. Next, please. So let's go clear back to 1914. When you could buy heroin hydrochloride. It was a $4.85 an ounce, quite a bit of money back in those days. But you could buy it over the counter, where you have to have a prescription for it. And then someone decided we need to do something about our drug problem in this country, when the 1.3% of the nation had a drug addiction problem. So they passed a law, and the first thing to do was make heroin illegal. except for when prescribed by a doctor in various forms, because most of your painkillers come from opiates, which is heroin. So next please. As I said before, 1.3% of people were addicted to drugs back then. Okay, drug users, according to the DEA, in 1965 we had 4 million so-called illegal drug users or abusers. In 2010, the last thing that they have stats for, about 112.5 million. DEA has been around since 1970, busting people for drugs. And they haven't made much of a dent in the problem, apparently. Next, please. The DEA price briefing book shows, and there's you can tap a couple times if you will, it shows different prices as they go through the years on the cost of drugs and their purity. So if you tap up once, 1970, the heroin price was $6 an ounce, purity was 15%. Go on down to the bottom of the list if you would please. You see the steady increases. In purity, the price goes down. The last thing we have there, I think, is 99. At 38%, 80 cents. And actually, it's well over 50% pure now. And every now and then you'll hear, I think about 3 years ago, we had a whole bunch of people dying from somewhere around 09, especially in nearby St. Louis and a couple of Chicago, a couple of the big cities, because they upped the purity again without telling the customers, and they buy it thinking it's what they always used, and they take a shot and they're dead because they can't handle the increase in purity. So one of our arguments about if we can legalize this stuff, we can control it when we treat these addicts, and they know what they're getting and what's in it and what's not in it, and how pure it is, and it doesn't cause them any serious problems. Next, please. So we'll talk about the DEA, which was started by President Nixon when he declared war on drugs in 1970, and how they've grown. So in 73, when they actually became super official, they received the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, and became the Drug Enforcement Administration. And as you can see, 2,898 employees. In 2007, it's still about that way today, 10,000 employees, 5,000 special agents, and the support staff. And the budget is at least in millions, which is like over $1 trillion now, so $1.5 trillion is the budget to go out. And I will tell you about whether or not what kind of drug enforcement they do, and see what they're all about. Next, please. As you see, through the budget too many times. This is from the latest available stats. I just updated this, so I'm not sure what it says myself. I just put this together the other day. I may move out here just a little bit in a second, but this is what I call the bragging on. The only thing I didn't miss as part of the table was all the other miscellaneous, what they call bar type drugs and other things that are sold in bars and stuff like some of them call gateway drugs and some other ecstasy and things of that nature. Doesn't include those. These include the major drugs. And this is seizures measured in kilograms. And if you'll notice, what do they seize the most? Marijuana. The easy stuff, the low-hanging fruit. It's everywhere. You probably know people that use marijuana. Most of you probably know someone, and so you have to ask the question, if you're a marijuana user, they have a little bit, they relax, do they beat up their wife after they use marijuana? Do they cause any kind of problem? Most of them, if they're any kind of user that maybe does it halfway steady sometimes, if they run out, they'll let it dry because they'd be a little bit paranoid if they use very much. But I have to tell you this right now, I've never used any illegal drug, so just didn't see the point, never did. So doesn't mean I'm better than anybody else, it's just I never saw the point. But I do know that some people get a little bit high, and they get a case of the munchies. Oh, darn, I'm out of munchies. They don't go out and drive, they don't want you. And if they do, they're not reckless drivers like somebody on alcohol. Marijuana users, guys, that stop 50 feet behind the stop sign and they sneak up on it. Okay? They don't run it. As if they have to go out and get some munchies, and hopefully it's a 7-Eleven or something close, so they don't have to drive very far. So anyway, so there you are. That's the latest DEA report. Comes right from their, what they call, you look up DEA.gov, go to stats and facts, you can get that same information right off the government website. That's where they came from. Shows that the vast majority of their work is marijuana work. President Nixon first started drug war. He allocated $100 million to fight the war war on drugs in 1970. Today, it's 74 billion. Mr. Marone, a Harvard economics professor, says it's closer to 75 billion plus. The federal government will readily admit somewhere between 25 and 40 billion, depending on which agency you're talking to, it's allocated for the war on drugs. That doesn't include the cost to the states. They'll fund almost any police department in the country at various levels to do drug war work. They won't hire extra officers, they'll just divert officers that they have to do this work. But then they don't pay for the prosecution, and they don't pay for the imprisonment to the tune of an average of $35,000 per year per prisoner. The states and the cities pay for that, not the federal government. So altogether, it's at least $75 billion a year that's spent in this country on the war on drugs, which is so successful it's no longer a problem, right? Wrong. Okay, next please. Marijuana arrests and total drug arrests in the U.S. As you can see, we've been down a couple more years too. In 2010, 1.7 million people arrested for drugs. And if we can get that over towards the right a little bit.
I'll have to mess up the program.
That's all right. Anyway, it amounts to well over 80% of all drug arrests. Again, as you saw in the other DEA stats. But this is nationwide, not just the DEA, but everywhere else. So it's, again, it's the easy thing to do. Marijuana people don't come out with guns and start shooting back or anything like that. And the vast majority of people that are arrested for marijuana are arrested for possession and were used not even for dealing. Just the guy walking down the street, the adult who happens to forget and has an ounce in his pocket or something gets arrested and sometimes gets more years in prison than the quickest in this country. So this is why we speak out against the war on drugs. These are some of the many reasons. Okay, we can go forward a little bit more. How's prohibition changed drug use in the U.S. schools? Go with the school children report. It's easier to buy illegal drugs than it is to buy beer or cigarettes. Anybody want to tell me why?
No ID required.
No ID required? And you can buy it anywhere, not just go down to the store that's authorized to sell it, right? So when we say we want to legalize drugs, we don't just say just make them legal and everybody have a free-for-all. We're looking at some corner. We don't actually push a certain policy, except along the lines of what we do with alcohol and tobacco. Some control over it, some regulations. When teenagers say, well, you're not old enough yet or something like that, but unless, of course, it's for medicine, for strong advocates of medical marijuana, right? There's a lot of work in South Dakota who this doesn't seem to like it. And Colorado also with regulations and changing the attitude on marijuana. So, international trading of illicit drugs annually generates $500 billion a year because it's a black market. Just like alcohol was when it was illegal. Al Capone and company made lots of money. They were driving around and killing each other too over this profit. Now we have drug cartels. I can't read that from where I'm at. But I'll tell you right now, 2-year commission on illegal drugs said in prohibition. This is an international prohibition, and it starts out, this was in March of 2007. I call it the Royal Society of Everything, if you can see that title up there. In red, it's got, I don't know, on 3 lines. They released a 2-year study calling for an end to drug prohibition. Next. And some of the recommendations where drug use should be seen in the context. Yeah, which is often far more harmful. Great point. Drugs policy should, like our own other policy on alcohol and tobacco, seek to regulate use and prevent harm rather than to prohibit use altogether. Next. The aim of drugs policy should be to reduce harm. The harm that comes from drug use and being addicted to drugs and so forth. The aim of drug policy is to reduce harm. Next. New bottom line, this is from, this is their resolution.
United States Conference of Mayors.
Okay. Senior, go ahead and read that for me, would you please? If you don't mind.
Whereas the United States Conference of Mayors has long been concerned about substance abuse and its impact on cities of all sizes, and whereas this conference recognizes that addiction is a chronic medical illness that is treatable, and drug treatment success rates exceed those of many cancer therapies. And whereas, according to the 2005 National Survey on Drug Use and Health, an estimated 112,085,000 Americans, 46.1% of the U.S. population aged 12 and over, have used an illicit drug at least once, and whereas the United States has 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's prisoners, incarcerating more than 2.3 million citizens in its prisons and jails, whereas virtually all independent analyses have found ONDCP's drug prevention programs to be costly and ineffective, the Government Accountability Office recently found that both the National Youth Anti-Drug Media Campaign and the DARE program have not only failed to reduce drug use, but have instead led to unintended negative consequences. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the United States Conference of Mayors believes that the war on drugs has failed and calls for a new bottom line in the U.S. drug policy, a public health approach that concentrates more fully on reducing the negative consequences, ensuring that our policies do not exacerbate these problems or create new social problems of their own.
Okay, remove the profitability continues to enhance by now 41 years by the United States policy of a war on drugs. It's, as they said, the Conference of Mayors said, exacerbates the problem of what we do now. The Conference of Mayors is made up of mayors of cities of 30,000 or more population throughout the United States. So many of the cities in this country. And the World Society of Everything has also spoken about harm reduction. We've been talking about that in Europe for a long time, finding a different approach. We, for a variety of reasons, want to hang on to our drug war policy. So what we say is this: we want to end prohibition. That means legalize drugs, because right now they're totally illegal. All you can do is arrest somebody, charge them, try them, put them in jail. That's all you can do. We think that other policies in other countries, such as the Netherlands, where they get people on addicted to drugs and put them on a program, and so they give them heroin for free. And they give them clean needles to shoot up. Actually, they do it for them in the clinic. They can't take it out. They can't give themselves to anybody else. When they another dose, they bring it back. They come back and get another dose. In the meantime, they're productive citizens. They work on getting them off their heroin addiction and back to where they can actually be productive, make a living, be drug-free. And as a result, they've had over many years now, 60% reduction in drug and related crime. They don't have to go out and commit crimes to get the money to buy from some street dealer. They put a stop to that. So all kinds of positives for why we should change the policy that we have and keep trying to get other companies to follow. So does the legalization cause everyone to use drugs? 10th graders in Holland, which is also pretty easy on drugs, especially marijuana, who have tried marijuana, is 28%. 10th graders in the U.S. who have tried marijuana, 41%. A little bit of a difference. It's kind of that fruit of the forbidden tree syndrome. You know, what do you mean I can't have that? Why should you have seen that? Drugs and violence indicators in the U.S. and Netherlands, marijuana use. In the USA, lifetime prevalence 33%, in the Netherlands, 16%. They figured it out soon. Heroin use. Lifetime prevalence is 1.1% in the U.S., 0.3% in the Netherlands. Now, when it comes to heroin, the basic stat is if they live long enough, most heroin users, by the time they've been between 5 and 10 years, will get off of it and give it up and decide there's something wrong with this way of life. If they don't get that overdose we were talking about, or the ways percentage to die from this, then they're over within 10 years at the longest anyway. Homicide rate per 100,000 population of the United States, that's a little bit lower than last year too. Basically it's 8, in the Netherlands it's 2 per 100,000 population. Incarceration rates in Western European nations are at or below 100 per 100,000 population. In our country, back in 2003, it was 726 per 100,000 population. Outcomes of legalization, 1.7 million fewer people are arrested each year for drug possession and use. $74 billion approximately saved every year, spent on the war on drugs now. Number two, let's have the federal government produce those drugs, and some of you that are a little more free-minded than others kind of choke on that one, but it's a start. And at least it's controlled and regulated, and probably safer. We don't want to talk about some of those prescription drugs that you always have advertisements on TV advertising some attorney. Have you used this drug? It's probably safer than what's going on with the illegal drug trade now. Outcomes of government profit, production, again, quality, control of production for consistency. You know what you're getting. Standardized measurement and potency. Again, you know what you're getting. Probably the end of overdoses, unless somebody really wants to overdose. Not accidental, but really wants to make an effort. Distribute free maintenance doses of drugs to any adult requesting them in an effort to help them get off the drug. Give them the maintenance dose, supervise how they're taking it, get them on a program at the same time that'll help get away from the dependency on the drug. Other things, no profit motive for drug distribution, that's the black market. The things that are causing, the thing that's causing 55,000 to 60,000 deaths in Mexico in the last 5 years, fighting over who gets to sell, win this market, make the profits out of it. No individuals selling drugs. No crimes are committed to obtain drugs. You have to go out and commit crime to get the money to buy them now at black market prices. No criminal association for drug users. They have to go find the criminal that's selling them, who's trying to give them something, hey, this is even better, I can get some more hook, you'll be a better customer, try this. No diseases passed, no sharing needles. I can't understand how people say, don't be handing out clean needles. You're just encouraging the people, you're also stopping the spread of AIDS and a few other diseases. If nothing else, users are able to stabilize their addictions. No shootings of dealers by other dealers, this is my territory, you can't be here. No police are killed for fighting a drug war, and something that's even more important to me, no one is killed by police in the drug war. We're always reading about a drug raid, some 7-year-old sees a family dog get shot. They just recently had another one, I think, where a mom holding a baby was shot, and the baby was wounded also. Telling you what, I don't like lifetime police officers. I like police officers. The vast majority of them are honest, hardworking, trying to solve the problems of the country. But you get involved in this drug stuff, and these people that have all, especially the DEA and some of these other units, they get all this gear that a regular police officer never sees to go bust someone's, hey man, I'm gonna answer the door, if you just knock. And we got all this stuff. Regular John, police officer, that walks up to some guy that pulls a gun on because they didn't know there was a gun involved in the call, and they've got just a uniform and their vest, not all this, SWAT types. Don't get me started on SWAT. Anyway, for what? So get a couple ounces of something that doesn't really hurt anybody, No kids are caught in crossfire. We've had people, we had, back in the mid-80s, we started having this gang warfare in general. We really hadn't seen much of it before. We were kind of late to get there compared to like Chicago or something like that. But it was fighting, and nowadays a lot of these gang wars are over drug sales territory because it's, make lots of money doing it. And what do you mean you're in my territory? Well, I say, so go drive by your house and just shoot the heck out of there. Well, I worked in some of the poorer neighborhoods in Denver, most of my career actually, and somebody's 6-year-old baby was sleeping on the couch out of the front window, and all of a sudden the place is really Burleson, and we had a dead 6-year-old baby. Totally innocent because of this kind of stuff. So we'd like to see that end. Next. No more soliciting, no kids caught crossfire, and nobody soliciting kids. We have people standing outside elementary school yards by the fence going, hey, come here, let me show you something, let me try this. See what that's for, you like it, then come see me if you want support. That's going on with this black market for drugs, because get the customer, get them hooked, make lots of money. We'd like to redirect the money saved, the $74 billion a year we were talking about, for programs that offer people hope for the future. And those could be rehabilitation centers, help them get off the drug abuse. Real rehabilitation, not a 3-month program that fails, but something that really gets you out of it and over it. guaranteed minimums in education, healthcare, housing, job training, employment, livable wages. Get these people to be productive citizens like they do in the Netherlands. Get where they're actually paying taxes instead of using up taxes. Results of offering people hope for the future, of less of a need to use drugs, fewer drug addicts. We can educate them and tell them, no, this is what you'll end up if you get on this stuff. You're going to have a real problem. This is what will get you out. Okay, next. So does education work? Here's an example. In 1985, in the United States, 22% of the population smoked tobacco. By 2003, with all of those things that came out about it, smoking's bad for you, everybody, American Cancer Society, American Lung Association, American Heart Association, all these people said, you know how bad smoking really is for you? And we got it down to 21%. Okay. Mark, would you read that one for me? This is from Albert Einstein. He was actually talking about alcohol prohibition, but the same thing applies today.
Albert Einstein on prohibition. The prestige of government has undoubtedly been lowered considerably by the prohibition law. For nothing is more destructive of respect for the government and the law of which the land than passing laws which cannot be enforced. It is an open secret that the dangerous increase in crime in this country is closely connected with this.
And next, Milton Friedman, who said, who recently died, but was one of the best known economists in the world.
Actually, yesterday was Milton Friedman's birthday.
Right. He said, regarding the war on drugs specifically, can any policy, however high-minded, be moral if it leads to widespread corruption, imprisons so many, has so racist an effect, destroys our inner cities, wreaks havoc on misguided and vulnerable individuals, and brings death and destruction to foreign countries? We pushed this UN initiative. It's actually 3 different treaties to the UN, known as the War on Drugs. Involved 61 countries around the world. We pushed it when we started our war on drugs. In 1932, at the end of alcohol prohibition in Boston, Massachusetts, this picture was taken. The women, remember it was Carrie Nation and her acts that started alcohol prohibition, running it up in the 20s, and alcohol being illegal. And this is another women's organization. Actually, and it says here, it says stamp out prohibition, save our children, 1932. They had a vehicle painted up to go around and say, stop this, man, this is causing us nothing but trouble. And we're having the same results today with the war on drugs. I have made handouts for you. You're going to incorporate this into my talk ultimately. These are things that just came out within the last month, actually. Because the war on drugs, partly through our efforts at LEAP, we're going to stop with that. I'll read that one in a minute. I'll Mark read that, so we'll stop with that. There's a number of studies that were published or written about just last month, July. One of them talks about a study, the gateway drug is alcohol, not marijuana. They did a bunch of studies. Studying the August of the Journal of School Health finds that the generations-old theory of a gateway drug effect is in fact accurate for some drug users. It shifts the blame for those addicts escalating substance abuse away from marijuana and onto the most pervasive and socially accepted drug in American life, alcohol. Using a national representative sample from the University of Michigan's annual, and I love this because DEA loves to use this all the time, Monitoring the Future survey. The study blasts holes in drug orthodoxy, wide enough to drive a truck through, definitely proving that marijuana is not the primary indicator of whether a person will move on to more dangerous substances. And it goes on to talk about that aspect of the study. Basically clearly says alcohol is a problem. If you didn't have alcohol and people would quit using it, you could probably get rid of about half your police force. I'm serious. From the New York Times, about a week ago, rethinking the war on drugs. Start with the numbers. They say numbers tell the failure of the drug war. When policymakers in Washington worry about Mexico these days, they think in terms of a handful of numbers. Mexico's 19,500 hectares, that's 2.5 acres. You go to poppy cultivation for heroin, at 17,500 hectares growing cannabis. The 95% of American cocaine imports brought by Mexican cartels through Mexico and Central America. They're thinking about the wrong numbers. If there's one number that embodies a seemingly intractable challenge imposed by the illegal drug trade on the relationship between the United States and Mexico, it is $177.26. That's the retail price, according to the DEA data, of 1 gram of pure cocaine from your typical local pusher. It's 74% cheaper than it was 30 years ago. Number today is pretty much all you need to evaluate the Mexican-American government's war to eradicate illegal drugs from the streets of the United States. You do well to heed its message. What it says is that the struggle in which they have spent billions of dollars and lost tens of thousands of lives over the last 4 decades has failed. The presidential election, both sides of the border offer a unique opportunity to re-examine the central flaws of the two countries' strategies against illegal narcotics. Its threadbare victories, a drug seizure here, a captured kingpin there, pale against its cost in blood and treasure. And its collateral damage, measured in terms of social harm, has become too intense to ignore. That article goes on a couple of more typewritten pages. July 19th is past Sunday. Columnist Alan Kruger, you may have read some of his stuff from time to time, talks about a June article in BusinessInsider.com. Michael Kelly said that his sting operation led to the sale of over 2,500 firearms, which 700 was recalled and were recovered in October. This was the Fast and Furious. You all heard about the Fast and Furious gun sales and all of that, the investigation by Congress, very culpably held in contempt by Congress, etc. Ted Bean Carpenter, a senior fellow for defense and foreign policy studies at the Cato Institute, is author of The Fire Next Door, Mexico's Drug Violence and the Danger to Mexico. It will be officially published in October, so you're likely reading about it first here. The book is a damning indictment of both American and Mexican policies regarding drugs. Quote, the global trade in illegal drugs is conservatively estimated at more than $300 billion per year. Mexico's share is something in excess of 30 billion. He was on to talk about some of the things we already hit on, the violence in Mexico, the loss of lives over the last few years, and so forth. That's a recent article that came out at the end of the month, a couple of days ago. Amy McCain and Michael Schmidt, published July 16th. Rising pill abuse forces new look at U.S. drug fight. It's another article that goes on and talks about how the drug war is not working, actually causes more damage than it solves. And I can do that to you, it would get boring. Now, for those of you that may have been involved in pushing for medical marijuana in various places and so forth, the Sacramento Bee, the 25th of last month, science supporting medicinal pot was clear. A dozen years ago, California lawmakers did something extraordinary. They authorized investigators throughout California to conduct a series of FDA-approved gold standard trials to assess whether cannabis is safe and effective as a medicine. And all research was conducted more than a dozen clinical studies examining whether cannabis would meet objective standards of safety and therapeutic efficacy. For example, investigators at the University of California, San Francisco, assessed whether vaporizing cannabis could rapidly and consistently deliver the plant's active ingredients to patients in a manner that is far safer than smoking. It could. At UC San Diego, clinicians examined whether inhaling cannabis posed potential harms to the immune system, particularly in subjects suffering from immune-compromised conditions like HIV. It didn't. And at universities throughout the state, investigators studied whether marijuana provided statistically significant relief in a number of hard-to-treat conditions such as multiple sclerosis and neuropathic nerve pain. Cannabis did so consistently. Summarizing results of California's novel, nearly $9 million medical cannabis research program in the Open Neurology Journal, the program's director, Dr. Igor Grant of UC San Diego, wrote, based on evidence currently available, the federal Schedule I classification of cannabis is not tenable. It is not accurate that cannabis has no medical value or that information is safety is lacking. The press is beginning to not talk the government line so much when it comes to drugs. There's a better way, that's what we have been saying, there's a better way to deal with the problem with drugs, to help solve the problems that some people in this country have of addiction to drugs. The bigger problem is the mess we created by making it illegal, doing all this enforcement action. This doesn't stem the flow, it makes a lot of people rich in the black market. And that's what LEAP is about, is trying to put an end to this madness and do something productive and free up your police officers to do more of what you would like them to do. Instead of kicking in doors and shooting dogs in front of babies and once in a while warning a mom holding a baby and so forth and so on, because these things have a large habit of going bad. Ruining people's lives. You know, if you're 18 years old, just out of high school, and you get caught with a little bit of marijuana, depending on the state, they're starting to back up on that a little bit, but many teen lives have been ruined because they were convicted of felony marijuana possession charges for a couple of ounces. You know, just enough to enjoy yourself for 2 or 3 weeks. You know, unless you're a hard marijuana. So no other crime, no other offense against society. But then they couldn't get a college loan because they were qualified. They're stopped from getting a lot of jobs because they have a drug arrest and prison time. They're stopped from a lot of things that they ordinarily would have done. It basically ruins the potential for possessing something that causes less harm than alcohol. And yet a teenager, underage, caught with some alcohol will get a ticket, maybe have to go to court and pay a small fine and they're done with it. So we have to think about what's going on in the country. Why is this? Which brings me up to one other thing. Well, the latest article I just got yesterday, I haven't had time to read it completely, but highlighted some things, published an alternate headline: 50% of Americans want marijuana legal. 70% want medicinal pot. You know where this came from? A Gallup poll conducted last month. A Gallup poll says that's how many Americans. If you're looking for something, you can find this online. Another aspect of the war on drugs is what we call the asset forfeiture problem. They go out and seize property, stop somebody. It's not just for drugs, but mostly it's for drugs. Stop somebody and they have some drugs on them. They're driving mom's Mercedes. Mom's Mercedes belongs to the police. You're going to have to prove that it's not part and parcel of the crime to get it back, or they seize it and they keep it. Many times, the property seized from people who really are not guilty of anything when it's all said and done can't afford to get the property that was taken from them by the police or federal agents, because by the time they finish paying an attorney to win the case, it's cost them more than the property lost its worth. This is a book published in 2010 called Policing for Profit. It does a state-by-state analysis of these asset forfeiture stuff and how the money. I know when I was in Denver, I've been retired for 9 years. We had running gun battles almost. They really didn't use guns, but they might as well. Between the police department and the district attorney's office. Denver was a city and county, all encompassed in one. Over who's going to get these asset forfeiture funds and what they were going to do with it. The police department wanted to use it for equipment and training. DA's office wanted to use it for training. And so this battle with this group of people they had set up to try and figure this out, who gets how much of the pie of this not insubstantial amount of money that comes from these things. So just for that, since I'm in Iowa, and nobody got a very good grade. The highest grade given by the people who wrote this was a C+ in any state. In Iowa, under the forfeiture laws of Iowa, you get an overall grade of D as of 2010. Iowa civil forfeiture laws place a heavy burden on property owners. Under state law, the prosecutor must only show that the property is related to criminal activity and can be forfeited by preponderance of the evidence. Once the prosecutor meets that burden, the burden is on the property owner to show his innocence, or in other words, that he did not know and could not have reasonably known of the conduct, or that he acted reasonably to prevent the conduct giving rise to the forfeiture. Moreover, law enforcement receives 100% of the value of any property seized under Iowa forfeiture law. And law enforcement agencies are not required to collect or report their forfeiture proceeds. 2003, $2,463,424 worth of assets were forfeited in Iowa.
How much?
Only 2.4 million. Not a huge number, but what's the population in Iowa?
But they don't have to report it, so how do we know?
3 million.
3 million?
Yeah.
So 67 cents of everybody's pocket.
If they don't have to report it, how do we know that that number means anything?
Well, because the numbers are there if you want to look for them. This doesn't have to necessarily be reported into Iowa law, at least as of 2010.
We're in a bi-state region, Tony. What about Illinois? What about these people in
I don't
Illinois?
know.
I have to mark it. It's only 2 pages away, okay? Illinois, their final grade was D. The forfeiture law grade was D. The state law evasion grade was D, or total grade D. Illinois has burdensome civil forfeiture laws for property owners, and these laws provide the bulk of forfeiture proceeds to law enforcement. Not all of them, but the bulk. In Iowa, law enforcement gets it all. The state need only show probable cause to forfeit your property. If you believe your property has been wrongly seized, you bear the burden of proving your innocence. Moreover, law enforcement keeps 90% of the proceeds for any sales of seized property, which creates a strong incentive for law enforcement to police for profit. Despite these broad laws, there is no requirement in Illinois that law enforcement account for forfeited property, currency and property, so we know little about its use under state law. We do know law enforcement in Illinois takes great advantage of federal equitable sharing, receiving back nearly $88 million from 2000 to 2008. And all of this, and this is one of the reasons why, not the only reason, this is not fair, this is not right, this is not a proper way to use police, but it gives the police a black name. And I've said before, and I've been quoted as saying this, the single source for complaints against police departments, the single largest source, is drug enforcement activity. So I'd like you to think about these things. Leap.cc, leap.cc on the website if you'd like to read more about us, join up, maybe become a member. We don't charge anything for it. We just like to show that we have support. Other than that, thank you. If there's time for questions, I'll take some more. We're not time.
Yeah, we're fine. They're not going to kick us out, I know that.
Okay. Back there.
If you notice the social costs of, people know that if their house is broken into and they call the police and they're a drug user, they're more likely to go to jail than anybody who broke into their house, and they tend to enforce their own rather than to go, they feel like they're pushed out of the courts and the police are not there for them.
Absolutely. These are not for drug users.
I think there's whole neighborhoods where people think like that because,
Well,
and
yeah.
I live in one and that's the result.
I'm sitting around and find a drug while they're looking at, what's this? Yeah, I know your house is broken into. Explain this to me. Yeah, okay. Yes.
What do you feel the impact would be on like poverty-stricken and lower-income neighborhoods through ending prohibition, just with, I guess, their feel of civil injustice?
Well, they feel more picked on than some of the groups, and rightfully so. They're more obvious, they're more picked on, and frankly, because part of it's, I guess, their fault. Typically, poor people are more apt, not always, but typically more apt to make some poor decisions in life. They abuse cigarettes, they abuse alcohol, they may get abusing drugs. They don't, what little money they are able to go out and earn, they sometimes don't spend as wisely as, say, people that are a little higher economic status. Not always, but that's frequently the case. And they have more of a tendency to use drugs. So the police are looking for a place to find drugs, where they're going to go. You're going to go to the poorer neighborhoods. And you hardly ever hear about a rich kid going to prison. They have $1 million lawyers. Guy lives over here at a low income, socioeconomic status, doesn't have that kind of money to get the public defenders. So.
I guess more along the lines I was trying to get to is, what do you think it'll do for those communities, of poverty-stricken communities who face this every day just for the good of the community? How do you think this will elevate them?
If we change our focus, like we're suggesting, on what to do about the problem of drugs, then that's one worry out to the plate. They're not going to jail. They're going to be subjected to long prison terms, heavy fines. They may have some interdiction that's going to be, let us get you out of this bad habit and help you along so that you can improve your life. Maybe get better jobs, make more money, get out of where you are now and live a better lifestyle. Get rid of these bad habits. We'll be offering help, training, rehabilitation if necessary, instead of just jail, or we can frankly get more drugs in jail than we can out of jail. So, yes, sir.
I enjoyed your presentation. It makes good common sense. I think one of the problems is the people that want to continue the war on drugs, some of them are like, it's like a moral imperative with them. It's as if they have the attitude that there is a giant rat called illegal drugs in the house called America, and we will kill that rat if we have to burn the damn house down. So what you're doing is trying to deal logically, sensibly to very emotional people. I wish you luck and I hope you get it done.
Thank you. We're getting a lot of attention. We're getting a lot of attention. At first, you're like a voice crying road. What? Some crazy cops are saying to stop the war on drugs. What's wrong with that? But, we've been there. We've seen what it does. We didn't like it. We said, we have to change this. It's nothing but a black eye from law enforcement. Distracts us from other things that we really need to do.
Tony, I have two questions. One, it seems you've heard the term cui bono, who benefits from this? And what I took notes after listening to you was the criminals are benefiting, some government agencies are benefiting because their budgets are ballooning and they're fighting over the spoils. And it was recently on Capitol Hill, a Treasury Secretary, one of Geithner's underlings, testified to Congress that yes, the Mexican cartels are still laundering money through U.S. financial institutions. And so our banks are benefiting from this too. So you have a triumvirate of those three things. And I'm curious, does we as a board think about that relative issue? I mean, I know that you have 50,000 members, but that's the top-down discussion. I have a question about bottom-up, and I want to hear about that. Your insight on that.
A lot of is kind of what we're doing right now. We're out talking in groups, such as yourselves, trying to do the education work. We consider ourselves an educational organization, just to enlighten people on what this is really all about and what's going on. Money, oh yeah, there's a lot of money. For instance, marijuana. What do you think is really against marijuana the most?
Pharmaceuticals.
Pharmaceuticals, you got it right on the head. They spend billions of dollars every year at Capitol Hill with their people whispering into the ear of these guys, they will support you, we'll donate to your campaign, don't legalize this stuff, in fact, pass more laws, because we're trying to come up with marijuana type stuff that doesn't work, Sativex and those things. It's not marijuana, it's some artificial stuff. Or if they did legalize marijuana, they wouldn't be able to hand them, okay, here, you make it and sell it on a prescription basis or whatever. So yeah, there's a lot of money and it passes through hands in Congress. No one's incentivized Congress to say, let's take a hard look at this because it's so damaging. There's too much going on in Capitol Hill. Don't get me into politics.
So from the bottom-up effort, it's Cook County in Illinois, where Chicago is, decriminalized small possession of marijuana, and it's reportedly saved the court system $1 billion, and they probably included incarceration fees and so forth, cost of incarceration. Have you seen, is there any kind of like, in other words, where can it start in some of these counties? Does it start with the board of supervisors? Does it start with the sheriff? Instead of worrying about, let's get this law changed from the top down so we're all on the same page. Can there be pockets of common sense? And have you guys seen any examples of that?
Well, that's how everything starts. The best example is not in this country. It's called Portugal. They decriminalize it. We don't really advocate decriminalization because it still involves a penalty process. Now, if the penalty, you have to go and get help and successfully pass a rehab program. I can see that myself. In Portugal, over the last 10 years, they decriminalized it, and everything that people predicted would be, in essence, legalized and decriminalized drugs did not happen. They have the lowest incidence of drug crime, the lowest incidence of drug addiction. They've reduced everything. It's been a huge success. You won't find any politicians in this country talking about Portugal. It's a shining star example of what would happen if you would change the policy.
So we need to hire some Portuguese consultants to come to our county and talk.
Maybe it's good, yes. It might be a good idea.
I have two additional questions. One, what do you think ending prohibition will do for the security of the southern border and necessarily aim for stability of Mexico itself?
Well, we think it'll do the same thing that the legalizing alcohol did. Almost put the mafia out of business. They had to go find other vices. And humans have plenty, find other vices to cater to. But it stopped a lot of the violence, a lot of the warfare over who's going to make the profits. And we think we can, in essence, put the Mexican cartels out of business. They'll have to find something else to do. I don't know if you know it or not, but there's a map out. You can look it up. I'll get you the website if you need it. Else in this country, there are representatives of 6 different Mexican drug cartels living in over 1,000 of our cities. Everywhere in the United States, every state has at least one city that has Mexican drug cartels. They're moving their stuff here to carry on their activity here. They have no problems about just getting somebody out of the way of the shield or whatever. So, thank you very much, folks. Appreciate it.
Thank you all for coming. I think we need to thank our host here. This is a free facility
Well, I live in West Rock Island, and the people there don't like to call the police for any reason because the police are more likely to turn it on the person, on you. If you bring them into your life for any reason, you're just as for them to stop any crime that happened or to catch the guy that did it to you, you are more likely to go to jail than anybody that victimizes you. You know what I'm saying? They turn you into the victim, and everybody knows it, so nobody will call the police. They don't think the courts are going to serve them. They deal with it on their own street justice. I mean, you want to talk about people fighting over territory? I think that's this big compared to the people that serve their own justice because they feel that the courts and the police don't represent them and are only going to victimize them. You know, that territory stuff is this much of it. It's petty respect issues, it's doo-doo-doo, it's blah, and they can't call the police when they're a victim. So they have to either let that person victimize them repeatedly, or do it themselves, which escalates everything. You know what I'm saying?
When they took all my stuff, it was like they won the Super Bowl. High-fiving each other.
Yep.
Let's call around and see what type of
They were in my house looking, that's not, those are some nice tools. That's a nice saw, and they took it all, you know.
Not only that,
Walk around shopping in my house.
in Illinois, they take all your stuff, like you said, you have to pay a cash bond on it. And at the time they inflate the price of everything. They give you the price what it was brand new, even though you might have had something for 10 years. Okay, well the TV or whatever, and that's so you can't bond, you can't even fight it.
Yeah, they try to make it so you can't fight. They put exactly, and that I had a fair judge who was honest, and I won most of my stuff back with him. But then there was another judge, because they broke it up into like 5 separate cases, okay? Just to be ridiculous.
Yeah, they wait you out.
Just to be ridiculous, okay? And then the judge was laughing when I appealed, and I got a motion to stay execution. This is me and my own attorney to get out of my house. And he laughed and put a $20,000 cost bond on the appeal so I couldn't afford it. You know? Like, here you go, you won't be able to fight for your house. Here you go, we'll take it. And they could not, when the police officer and everybody's on the stand, they had no evidence that I was doing anything that they accused me of 2 months earlier, much less 2 years earlier when the house was paid. You know what I'm saying? And I paid for it on contract over years.
Yeah, they don't even
no
investigate
evidence.
that.
They lied and said I acted like plants were this big when they were this big. They weighed the dirt and all this. And they testified on the stand that I had 1,205 grams of cannabis. And the law says I have to have 2,000.
Right.
They don't care.
Right.
They do not care. They take it, they make you fight for it back, they make you fight for it back. They put every obstacle in the way of you being able to fight. They deceive, they lie, the police lie in court. That, there's no justice. No justice.